Hey everyone, it's Louisa Munson from Feel Good Astrology, and I want to welcome you to this ongoing conversation that I'm having with Jeff Granville. Now, if you've seen these or listened into these conversations before, you'll know that Jeff has been researching biohacking the health of humanity. You know, he's through his work with his own son, who is very, very sick and very poorly. Jeff has learned how to blend mindfulness with medical treatments. So he has been working very closely with hospitals and with parents and children, teaching mindfulness and also breathing techniques to enable better outcomes for healing. So if you've been listening in, you've probably learned a few different breathing patterns already. Today, we're learning the next step in the STIR, which is Somatic Trauma Imprint Release, the STIR technique that Jeff has come up with. In this session, because I actually spoke to him this time last week, in this session, we're actually exploring all of the different subjects, you know, so this was a very organic and very rich and very fruitful, I think, conversation between us, where we really don't hold back about mind, body, and spirit, and the importance of finding balance in our day-to-day living. So, you know, stay tuned for this. I think you'll enjoy it. Towards the end, we do the last breathing technique. And just to let you know, Jeff and I have agreed to also record each of the breathing techniques as standalone videos, because each of the techniques in themselves only take a few minutes. And so if you like what we're doing, look out for those videos, which we'll be advertising very shortly. Anyway, I'm going to pass you over to Jeff in just a second, but just to let you know, as we start this video, it's literally an ongoing conversation. So it's not like, hey, Jeff, how are you? We literally just dive straight into the talk. So anyway, let's check in with Jeff now, shall we?
Yeah, well, thank you. She said, see that woman sitting 2 rows in front of us? And I said, yeah. She goes, her name is Bonnie. And last year she had to have a brain tumor removed, a very difficult brain tumor. And Marla had worked with her and taught her the coherence breathing that I taught her 2 years ago. And the doctors said they've never seen anything like it. She came through with flying colors, quick recovery, easy surgery. Everything happened very coherently. And she had a coherent order to the procedure room, which we direct. And after the event, Marla took me over to her and said, Bonnie, I want to introduce you to Jeff. And she just immediately came over and hugged me and, you know, thanked me for, bless you, God, bless you. Immediately thanked me for the coherence work and passing that forward and said, be sure to thank your son for bringing that forward. So it's just amazing what's happening. And
wow.
Yeah. There's another lady we met that her name is Terry, and her son is a 2-time survivor of leukemia. And they gave him 6 months to live the first time. And then he got when he was going for a scan, found a completely different epiphenomena of leukemia and gave him 2 weeks to live. They removed one lung. And now he's the only human to top all 7 peaks of all 7 continents. And he's been to the South Pole and the North Pole. And he runs a foundation for leukemia survivors that if you make it to 16, he'll take you, all expenses paid, train you, pay your equipment, everything, to climb a mountain with him. So
my goodness,
amazing foundation. So I'm just being networked. Like everyone I meet introduces me to 3 more, you know, so it just, oh, it's just,
that's just incredible. Amazing. I was so delighted for you. And all of this has come from you being in absolute authenticity and love for McCoy.
Absolutely. And that is the center. That is absolutely the center of the vortex, is to be in that love moment with another person and be coherent with them. And then you're an emergent total and you're open to divinity, and the best possible outcome is available. That's the whole key to it.
Wow. You are such a good example of that, Jeff.
Thank you.
Now, as this happens every time when we talk, we get going and some really juicy stuff comes out before I actually kind of say, welcome to the show, Jeff. How you doing? Because we just
right?
talking, don't we? But just, you know, as we get going, I want to just reconfirm what we're doing today, because this is part 2, isn't it, of our Somatic Trauma Imprint Release video. Because last month, or actually just 2 weeks ago, wasn't it, we got together and you were teaching me the Somatic Trauma Imprint Release breathing patterns technique, which built on from the session that we did before. So what are we going to be covering today, Jeff?
Well, I would like to go into that a little deeper, but first I'd like to back up and tell a little bit more about the story of why it was created. I think I said it was because of my son's surgical sites, but I'd like to elaborate on that a little bit and talk about how we started it. And then 2 years later, I found scientific backing for what we had already done that really added to it. So that leads into it, and then we can go over the coherence breathing again, and we can do some somatic trauma release, and then talk about where else, because I'm now employing it into different body movement, because once you get that rhythm of 5 seconds in and 6 seconds out, or 5 heartbeats in and 5 heartbeats out, I'm starting to do it like with my body work, where I count to 5 to the top. I pull in all the energy of the universe, all the Planck waves, and I bring it down 1, 2, 3 to my heart. And then I push down through my my heart, gut, sacral, root, down into Mother Earth, and then turn my hands over on one and do it again. But you maintain that coherent breathing and heart rate the entire time. And now I've even done more stretching exercises to where I can do a plank position and breathe in for 5 heartbeats. Instead of holding my hands down like this, I just cross and hold my wrist. And I'm able to maintain a much lower heart rate. And I don't shake. I stay in that coherent pattern for I did 4 minutes and 45 seconds today. I've been able to add 15 seconds every day on, and I'm shooting for 5 minutes tomorrow. And I've never done more than 4. So, and I'm doing it without shaking. So what it's doing is it's calming the autonomic nervous system, because when you're doing something in stress, you're triggered in fight or flight. And then you get in that loop of, I'm going to quit. I have to quit. So if you break that cycle and stay coherent, your body is calm and you can do more physically and then recover. Like after running, you stop to recover, and then you breathe as much as you need to, and then you go to the coherent breathing and you recover faster. So I'm employing this coherent breathing that got us through emergency procedures all the way into like exercise and daily life of how to recover. So
how fantastic. That sounds amazing.
Yeah,
I mean, I was practicing it while I was doing my washing up today. And and this is possibly not the right place to do it, but I've also done it when I've been in the bath.
I do too. I just did today.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Because it's like one of the only times when I actually find I have a few moments to myself. It's when I'm washing up, because nobody wants to talk to me when I'm doing that.
Mother. And
when I'm in the bath, it's just like I lock the door behind me. Kind of think deep. But also it's much easier for me to feel my pulse when I'm in the bath as well.
Beautiful. That's actually, another person I connected with is the founder of Rebirthing. And this is another person that Dr. Thomas Verney connected me with. And it's a breathing in the water, and then you calm the system. And when you come out of the water, it's called rebirthing. So we're connecting. And then he's also connected me with Michael Levin, who is like the PhD master of what breath does on a cellular level. So I'm getting those people to endorse and be part of our group as well.
This is insanely awesome. I'm just delighted, really delighted. It's so funny because like when we first spoke back in, was it April? I can't even remember when we first spoke, because from my perspective, our connection feels very timeless, and I love that about our chats. But it was earlier this year, wasn't it? Probably 5-6 months ago, and Yeah, I mean, you were talking, but you weren't saying to me every like moment, oh my goodness, and this is linking in and this is linking in. You were saying, you know, this is going well and I'm feeling really positive. And in the course of just under half a year, things have changed and kind of
Oh,
started to go whoop for you.
amazing, amazing. And
Incredible.
it really plays into something I truly believe in, is that in the quiet moments when seemingly nothing's happening is when the universe is conspiring for your success and adjusting big movements. And that's when most people fail, when most people give up, when it seems like nothing's happening. And those are the times where you pull in the most and work on yourself. Like since July 3rd, in 2 months, I've lost 25 pounds. I've juiced every morning. I intermittent fast until noon, and I eat 3 cloves of garlic, an avocado, and some salmon mixed together as my lunch. And then I eat what I want till 8. So I'm 16 hours off food and 8 hours on. And I'm changing the energy of my body, because part of what I present is the living system, how mass, energy, and information are inseparable. So if you want to change your mass and your energy, you put in new information, you open yourself up to new things, you become divergent focus. And food is energy, food is information. So you're putting new information into your body to create new energy and a new mass. So I figured, why not practice it myself, right? Because in those quiet moments when it seems like nothing's happening, I knew this was going to speed up. I had every bit of faith that this would speed up. So I said, you know, when you can't change the world, you change yourself, right? And that's how you change the world. So it's absolutely working.
You know, I'm not surprised at all, because actually the last time I spoke with you, I thought, Jeff's looking different. Like you're looking more vital. You're looking younger, and you know, I didn't think you looked old or anything untoward or anything at all.
I get it.
I thought, wow, Jeff's looking fitter. And then today, seeing you again, you know, with a gap of 2 weeks, I thought exactly the same.
Wow.
Only this time you look a bit tanned as well. You know, you look like you've been doing a retreat. You're looking really vital, and I think you know, as I'm looking at you, you're representing what it is to be somebody in their own power, you know, in full sovereignty, in alignment, in health, vitality. And yeah, I 100% agree with you about the pauses. You know, when you're pausing in that space, giving yourself the time to do that, that's when the magic happens. So yeah, you're doing it physically and emotionally and spiritually. It's beautiful.
Yeah, the trifecta, mind, body, spirit, right? And the Trinity. And it's practice what you preach, walk the walk that you talk. You know, it's all of that. And it's quantum alchemy. It is absolutely knowing what the quantum possibilities are in the divine moment. And then, like I say, pray, but row towards shore, right? Don't just sit out there stranded. Don't row aimlessly, and don't just pray, you know, pray, but row towards shore.
It's so funny. I was about to ask you a question, and as I was about to ask you the question, I realized I already knew the answer, but my question was going to be, with all these changes that you're making to your body, is it bringing new people, like a new upgraded or a sort of higher vibe group of people into your life? And of course, you've already just shared with me it has. So it's like, you know, as you raise your own vibration, other people who are matching your vibration or inspiring you on that journey, like you're going in the same direction, aren't you? You're swimming in the same streams, and so you're coming into contact with people that are sort of matching the new direction that you've created for yourself.
Yeah, and I would like to even evolve that one more lap in the Spire of Ascension, is with Ho'oponopono. Like Dr. Hugh Lin says, you ever notice every time you have a problem, you're always there? And
it's us. Makes that problem.
It might have been my metabolism and my energy that, you know, the vortex brought the people to me, but maybe I wasn't my best self, right? The higher self. I wasn't my best self, and they bounced because of that. So I was feeling like I cannot allow any more missed opportunities. I have to make myself radiate and vibrate at the best, clearest possible frequency. So going to my core and being at zero and not thinking it's something they don't like, so it's me, it's this. I just have to focus on myself. And then the next lap around, here we have an or better every single time. So.
Wow. Sorry. I know this is a show about your wonderful stir technique and part 2. But I just want to quickly share an experience that I'm doing. So not quite the same, like in as much as I'm upgrading my DNA in a particular way. But one of the things I was thinking about is the entanglement between people and the people that we work with. And I was thinking I'm dedicated to the upliftment of the people that come into my life. Well, everyone really, but in particular with my clients. And so recently I was thinking, if I've got a client that I don't feel is really trying to uplift, if they're trying to stay in place, that's going to have an effect on me as a coach, and also will have a knock-on effect with the other people that I'm working with.
Absolutely.
And so recently I've just been letting go of people who I can see aren't in the same space as me, that aren't wanting to kind of raise themselves up. People that are holding onto their patterns for fear of letting go of them. I need to let them go, and I have been. So it's kind of similar, isn't it?
Yeah, and you're not abandoning them; you're releasing them, and it's like, the more we go to our center, the more we go to zero, and we open up our heart space and we become more divergent. We become more empathetic. Because we see other people. So we're more apt to lower ourselves down to their level to try to bring them up. But that just lowers our vibration for everybody else. Exactly. Like I felt
like I was in a web, and as I was kind of trying to match their vibration, I was pulling at the spider web at my other clients as well. And I can't do that.
That's perfect. The visual. I wish we had graphic artists available that could take that and just, make that graphic so we can show it.
I know somebody that could do that.
Oh, I have so many visuals that I would like to put together. I've got lists of things that, new things that I want to bring forward. So that's a very expensive person to hire, usually, is someone that can do the graphic art, and very valued. Because if you watch like Joe Dispenza's show on Gaia Rewired, the graphics are amazing. The science and the graphics and his voice all together, that's fully intended. I mean, like in his guided meditations, he's had people hooked up, the whole group, the whole room, to EEG and heart rate variance. And his music producer, Barry Levingston, is a 40-year master at playing music scores for movies to get your emotional roller coaster going, to follow the movie. So what they've done is they put together music, background music, and deflection and tone and cadence of his voice, and they can watch it in real time, what it does to people's brain waves and heart rate variance. So all of his guided meditations, if I didn't know that, they would kind of bother me, because I'm like, why is he going so far afield with his voice and how he says it? But then once I learned the science behind it, it all made sense. And then it was easier for me to accept, because my mind wasn't stuck on, why is he doing that? I could just absorb it. That's what science does. That's what awareness and explanation does, is it takes away that questioning and it allows the buy-in, so divinity can just be in the moment and not get bothered by it. So
I love that. So I kind of dragged you off a little bit, but funnily enough, as I dragged you off and away, I suspect we've actually got closer to where we were going anyway, because that's kind of how it works. But what would you like to share with us more about the stir technique and its applications? Because we were talking then about how the breathing technique could be used to not just for releasing trauma, but for, upliftment in general. Where would you like to start with this, Jeff? Because, I mean, this is your technique and your research and your experience.
Well, we can, if we need to review it at all, we can start there. You can, but I would really like to start out with the impetus for it. Why with McCoy in the hospital and his surgical sites, because He had 2 different tubes in his chest at one point, and they had dressings on him, and they had to be changed every week. And it was very, very traumatic. And he guarded them. And you get in that guarded position, and we all do that with shame or trauma or guilt. Okay. And we guard ourselves. It's called body armoring. And we're body armoring against an event specific biological marker, like a surgery spot. And so that was the impetus for it. So I'd really like to spend a little bit of time about that and how we did it, because there was one under his arm where they had to go orthoscopically, and he was under
anesthesia. What does that mean, orthoscopically?
They go in with 3 different probes. One is light and a camera, and the other one is a tweezer, and the other one is a scissor. So they went in with 3 different puncture wounds, and they did that. And when he woke up, he had a tube and a suction ball to keep any fluid out of it. And then the surgeon came back in the middle of the night and pulled the stitches and pulled the tube and taped it shut. And he guarded that. I mean, he would not lift his arm, and he was starting to walk different and carry himself different. And that's what happens to your structure when we guard and block something. We change our posture, and we're not open and receptive. We're guarded. So that makes tension in our structure somewhere else and creates problems in our neck and our spine and our posture. And it, as Thomas Verney says in his book, The Embodied Mind, coming out October 5th, he said that any body armoring blocks consciousness from those cells. Every cell has consciousness, and in our toroidal field of the heart, it's sending out information and bringing in new information. So your perfect quantum form exists in the toroidal field of your heart, but areas that are body armored are blocked from that new consciousness, and it's trapped with the old consciousness. So releasing that body armor with our somatic trauma imprint release and havening and tapping and the other things, my modality is not the only one, of course, but when we do that, it creates a delta frequency in the brain, releases the higher pitched frequency of the cells that are holding the biological marker, and trains it back to that of the thalamus so it can fluctuate with the rest of the body. Then that opens it up to consciousness, and your divine design is allowed to come in and recreate cells. Because as we know, like skin cells shed every few days, and hair cells, and each part of the body is a different timeline, and it takes up to 7 years to recreate bones. So every 7 years, you're a completely new body. So if you've got part of your body that's damaged or doesn't move properly, the cells, the stem cells that are coming to replace those cells, kind of take the baton from the last cell and say, this was our perfect design, but this is what we're holding right now. So you hold it for me for a while. So when stem cells have a clear quantum design, your design of the divine, it can bring that new message in there and then recreate you. I'm not saying we're yet capable of growing new limbs or repairing scar tissue, but it helps. Healing is part of the immune system, and the spleen is the brain of the immune system. And if you're stuck in fight or flight, it's not going to be healing a wound. It's going to be running from the saber-toothed tiger. So you don't heal very well when you're in fight or flight. So that's what body armoring is. You're stuck in fight or flight, especially in that area, and then you're not allowed to heal. So,
my goodness. It's just listening to you there, and I've written a couple of notes of things to ask you later on, because I can think of 2 really huge and current body armoring questions to you. Okay. And I don't want to forget about them.
No, I think that's where we want to go. I think if we start with how we got it and the science behind it, and then what we're doing now and where we're taking it into body movement for free expression and cell regeneration, then we can go into maybe some specific instances and we can talk about those, and surprise me, please.
Okay. Well, I'm thinking of one that's very current right now, and that's face
I'm
mask.
still listening. I just have to grab
That's
something.
Okay. So Jeff, I'm thinking right now, people are wearing face masks left, right, and center, and they're also a lot of people are still practicing social distancing.
Yep.
And if the spleen is the brain of the immune system, and we're going into a fight or flight kind of pattern, the whole purpose of wearing face masks and social distancing will at some point create a body armor around people if they're not feeling safe.
Yep.
As I put myself in the mind, I'm not someone that enjoys wearing a face mask, and I've changed my life completely to avoid doing it. I'm like, it's not for me, thank you. I have done, and I'm definitely not a social distancer, but I live my life in such a way that it's not an issue. I'm not like in crowded places. We're quite sort of like reclusive and everything. But when I put myself in the mindset of somebody who's wearing a mask and walking around and thinking about keeping their space, I'm feeling a lot of fear and rigidity in my body, almost like I've got my arms out making a cage around myself. So I right now I'm imagining that people around the world have created this tension in their torso for the preparedness to be able to push somebody away if they get too close, or that they've got the aggression to be able to say, back off, you're in my space, dude. So there's this kind of rigidity. So I'm imagining that that's going to have a huge effect on humanity, in as much as their body armoring isn't so much site specific, like, McCoy's injuries, but it's almost like an all over body armor.
Right. It's so true. And there's, it's like, I come from a small town where every time you walk by somebody in the store, you look at them because you might know them. Every time somebody walks in the restaurant, you look up and you get that affirmation. Hey, I know you, I get, and one of the main takeaways from Dan Siegel's book, Mindsight, was mirror neurons, and how many facial cues we have. And if you cover up this much, you don't know if I'm smiling or grimacing.
Yeah.
You're reading my eyes. So one of our most innate human requirements is to feel felt. So if we're explaining something to somebody and we can't pick up on half of the cues, we never feel felt. So we are more isolated than just the mask and distancing, which you're right. We set up this complete body armor shield around us because, like I said, I would, greet people on the street. Now I walk away from them and I wear a mask because I'm trying to respect other people's fears, not my own. That's it. So
that's the only reason I will wear one.
Yeah. I mean, a mask is, they said, wearing a mask and trying to stop the virus, any virus, is like trying to stop a mosquito with a chain link fence. People just don't realize how small molecules are. In Gerald Pollack's book, The Fourth Phase of Water, he describes how small water molecules are. And if you look at, if you have a screen on your window, a bug screen on your window, they have little tiny squares. You could take 4 million water molecules, arm and all, and they could all fit through without touching the edge.
Whoa.
4 million.
Yeah.
So, I mean, between me and my screen, there's billions of molecules, and they're so tiny we can't see them. So
I was just trying to think, or 4 million of them, as you were saying that, and I just couldn't even conceive of it.
Yeah. There's actually, this is a beautiful thing. When I take a cup of water, there's more water molecules in an 8-ounce glass of water than there are 8-ounce cups of water in all the water on Earth.
I love that.
Yeah. If you take
Wow.
a full lungs of breath and let it out, okay, there's more air molecules in one lung full, one breath in and one breath out. You're putting out more air molecules, oxygen molecules, than there are breaths full in the entire atmosphere.
Wow.
So that's why when, like they say, every time you take a breath, you're taking in 3 air molecules from somebody else's breath. And if that doesn't explain entanglement, I don't know what's up, right? Because you think of all the quantum particles that are being breathed in and out. And it's just proof, scientific proof of entanglement.
Wow. I imagine lots of people's minds are being blown a little bit right now. So that was the first thing that was thinking in my mind when you're talking about body armoring. So that's like a very relevant one, but also one that I think there's going to be a lot of trauma imprint on people's bodies that aren't site specific, but it's going to be felt in so many different ways. It's almost like a psychic trauma imprint, because it's not actually physically in the skin, but it's something we're holding on. But the other thing I wanted to ask you about is the pregnancy posture, because obviously I've had 3 children, and there is something like you were saying, you change your posture when you're protecting something about yourself, a hurt or something going on. And I noticed that my posture has kind of irrevocably changed since I've become a mum. And I think at some level I might be holding on to the pregnancy posture now, like the idea that I'm keeping my baby safe. And my body yielded so that I could keep my baby safe. I wonder if I'm still holding on to that now, because I don't know, there's something about it's almost like I can't release it or let go of it. And I don't think it's about stretchy muscles or anything like that. My midwife, she was like, "Ooh, there's nothing wrong with your muscles. They're completely, as they should be." But I'm wondering if, because I also know that once a woman knows they're pregnant, their posture changes automatically, even before they start showing. Because they know that there's something growing inside them that they need to protect.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would have to, I'm responding on the fly because I haven't been asked that or studied that. Dr. Verney would be an amazing person to ask that question if you interview him, but it would have to, because if you look at the physical mechanical changes that happen to your body, the widening of the hips and, the physical structural preparation to carry and deliver a child changes your structure. So anything that takes us out of our perfect structure is going to have effect on our muscular tone and arrangement. Our ectoskeleton, not external skeleton, but our it's the living matrix is what it is. And Dr. Eastham is a excuse me, you're going to edit this, right?
I can do. Yeah, hang on. Let me make a note of the time. Hang on.
Well, I didn't even know if you were recording yet.
Oh, no. I started recording right at the start.
Okay, hang on. I said his name wrong, and that was the reason. This is the Energy Medicine by Dr. Oshman, James Oshman. This talks all about the skeletal structure of the body, and it's an amazing read, and it refers to that very mechanism right there.
Wow. So. Okay. I've made a note to edit that out.
Sorry about that.
But I'm sure he'd forgive you anyway, because you've actually quoted him, or you've given him a name check. Most people, I think, would be very grateful, to be highly regarded like that. Yeah, I was also thinking about, mothers that have lost children, in utero. I've had a couple of miscarriages, and I'm sure at some level as well, there's that part of me that's thinking, oh, my children, because it's quite a traumatic thing to go through. So yeah, they were the two types of body armoring that sort of came to mind. But I'm also aware that my daughter armors herself in a particular area, and I have no idea where it comes from. And also, my parents, when they spoke about me as a small child, they couldn't hold me because I was ticklish in an area. And I've remained ticklish in that area as well. And, I'm wondering if we come in with a certain amount of body armoring from, I don't know, a pre-birth situation.
I believe that. I believe that we all come here with a soul contract and a predisposition. Yeah. We pick our parents, we pick our situation to play out that. And, we can, like I've said before, sometimes I'm the king on my chessboard and sometimes I'm the pawn on somebody else's. We all play different roles, and we play different roles for our children to come in and experience life the way they're meant to experience life. And, I can look back at things that I did that just didn't make sense and would be viewed as hurtful to my children when there was no intent in that. I was acting out the way I felt best at the time, but it was part of their lesson, so I was a pawn on their chessboard in those instances. Yeah. So yeah, I believe that. I believe we have a predisposition towards a certain experience, so we can report back to divinity. We're all fractals of consciousness. It's like I said, every brain is a neuron of the global brain, so we're here to experience life in a completely separate point of view than everybody else, so that we can report that to the collective consciousness, and that's how the universe grows. And we need more space-time to record all that. So that's more Nassim Haramein right there.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, so I took the body armoring conversation a little off track, but I'm guessing that anyone that finds us and listens in, it's going to relate to them as well. So let's go back to how you discovered this and how it all came about, how your research came about. So you were talking about McCoy and his 3 holes, and his guarding of his body. What happened next?
Well, like I said, from the very beginning, they had to install a PICC line, and then they put a Hickman in, and then when his kidney failure happened, they put an HD catheter in. So for a long time, he had 2 different ports in his chest, and they are tubes that go through a hole in the skin that doesn't heal. It goes in, and of course it heals when they pull the tube out, but it stays malleable and liquidy. It's very sensitive, and it goes all the way into the heart, right before the heart, so they can draw blood out and do dialysis or give medicine and draw blood for blood labs. And those spots are guarded because there's tubes coming out, and if something tugs on that tube, think of what's happening. And so you're guarding that. So those are typically somatic trauma imprint spots for the rest of their lives. And I've seen kids that grew up with years of treatment that actually can't walk straight anymore because they've guarded for so long. So I started talking to McCoy because I needed to change a dressing. He had orthoscopic surgery. They had to cut a 2-inch hole in his pericardial sac because fluid had been building around his heart because of the tumors, and it was causing pressure inside the pericardial sac onto his heart, which is called tamponade, and it can actually collapse the heart and the child dies, or anybody. We usually have a tablespoon of fluid in our pericardial sac. It's just like a lining, and there's a little bit of fluid for lubrication. But when there's irritation, plasma comes and it builds fluid inside. And 2 different times they had to drain it. And each of those times were just miraculous stories of how he got through it and what he did. And he was able to survive those surgeries on a little bit of anesthesia and not lose cardiorespiratory tone. So there was a lot of trauma about that. It led up to saying, okay, we can't allow fluid to build again. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in and we're going to cut a hole in his pericardial sac. And of course, as a parent, you're just like, are you kidding me? What are you going to do to him now? You know? And so we get the description of what's going to happen. I prepare him for it. We do all of our breath work leading up to getting a word right before anesthesia is administered to keep him in theta instead of going into coma. We did our whole routine, and he wakes up with a tube coming out. They did not tell us there was going to be a tube coming out, and they have a little suction ball on there because if any fluid builds up, they want it to be drawn out. So after he's woke up, he sees it and he's in shock about it and he's guarding it. And then the surgeon comes in unannounced and says, we're going to take that tube out now. So they, you know, he's got to lift his arm and he's got to have the stitches taken out and pull the tube out. And so, okay, you get the idea. It's extremely traumatic, and he's guarding that. Like, so I couldn't reach between his arms to pick him up. I couldn't clean. I couldn't change the dressing. So what we did is I just said, okay, McCoy, what we're going to do is we're going to face each other. And in a day or two, I'm going to clean and change that dressing. But what we're going to do now is we're going to practice it without doing it. And that will dissipate the anxiety if we practice it without that harsh finish. So what we did is I faced him and I said, okay, right now, I'm just going to raise my hand and you're going to make a gap between your arm and your ribs. Okay. Because they actually had to go between the ribs to do the orthoscopic surgery. So that first time we just did our breathing and we counted down like we do for a lab draw. We count down from 3, 2, 1, go. And on go, we release our air. So it's a parasympathetic response to a sympathetic trigger. And we just practiced that a few times where he knew that I wasn't going to approach him. I wasn't going to do anything. I was in the moment with him. He trusted me. And then each time we did it, I would move a little bit closer and he would raise his arm a little bit more. And then one day I said, okay, what we're going to do, it was actually the next day. We did it like 5 times a day. And then the second day I said, this time you're going to raise it just enough for me to slide my hand in, but I'm not going to touch your arm or your ribs. I'm just going to be in that space for a few seconds and then pull out. So we did it over and over until there was no charge. And then I was able to, we did the breathing and we did the countdown. And then I went in and used the adhesive remover swab to get it loose. And I was able to change the dressing. And he didn't have to be held, because when children have that done, the nurse has to change that dressing on this day and this time, regardless. And if you stall, she's now in a hurry. So nothing quashes spirit as fast as being in a hurry, right? So I was going to do it. I was not going to allow the nurse to do it, because if they don't practice, they're going to have to hold him down, and then you're going to spiral in dissension, and kids have to be held down and medicated, sedated in order to change that dressing. So we were able to do it without any anxiety, without any stored trauma, and then it was gone. We could do it again the next time without have to practicing it over and over again, because we had a routine. He knew what to expect. And the most important thing that I didn't realize at the time is that our autonomic consciousness actually recorded the fact that it's being triggered, but nothing bad happened. So it was able to release that somatic trauma. And then I was able to take a wash rag and wash him. He held his arm up. And it's a matter of trust. I mean, if you think about something that's scary and there's somebody else in charge, you gotta trust them in order to really be at peace. And like a roller coaster ride or anything, it's meant to be fun, but it's kind of scary, right?
Yeah.
So how it's handled determines. So like, again, we say the set and setting determines the experience, and the experience determines the outcome. So creating a set and setting for success is how you get success and build resiliency. So then I did it for all his surgical sites. He has like 12 different surgical sites, and the last two were big ones for his kidney removal on his left side and his kidney transplant on his right side. So he is completely free of any sensation of guarding those spots. The only reason that he still guards his kidney transplant is because they told him he has to wear a kidney guard. It's actually like dive suit material with a hard plastic thermally shaped guard that goes in there, because if he gets kicked and or a ball gets kicked and it hits him there, when they do a kidney transplant on a kid, they don't put it in the back where the old one came out of, they put it in the front. So it's guarded by the muscle tissue. So he has to be very careful of that. So I don't want him to be free, completely free of his awareness to guard it, but I want him to be free of the fear of being touched there. So by clearing the somatic trauma, we're able to do what we need to do to wash and guard without the emotional charge of guarding it out of like survival. So a couple years into that, I found a research study of a person in California who was, it's called Somatic Release is the name of the article. And what he did, it's like a re-experiencing. And there's a case where a grown man only had 2D vision and he was colorblind. And there was no physical reason why. And he had no idea why. Well, in somatic re-experiencing, somatic release, he was saying he approached the topic and backed off. He approached the topic and backed off. And after a while, it wasn't as charged. And the man remembered that he witnessed his own dad's suicide when he was 3 years old. And the autonomic consciousness said, that's too much. That's too graphic. Yeah. So it took away his 3D vision and his sense of color. And as soon as they experienced that release, he had 3D vision and full color, immediate. So that was like, oh my gosh, I just found the scientific foundation and backing for this STIR project, this exercise that we do. So that's what's led, when we do the breath work, where we breathe in and say, ah, and serotonin goes on our heart and it calms it. And then the heart follows the breath. And then we go to the coherence breathing, and then we breathe to follow the heartbeats. You are getting to a place where you're controlling your autonomic swing so that as we approach something of somatic trauma, on, like I said, on the exhale of 4, 5, and 6, we breathe in and the heart rate goes up in the autonomic swing. And then when we breathe out, it starts to go down 1, 2, 3, and then we clench on 4, 5, and 6. So we're not interrupting that cycle. So then we can go and we can put a little bit of pressure where your tension goes, the energy flows, right? So you're breathing in your design of the divine without that body armor, and you're exhaling everything that doesn't serve, which is the body armor, because you no longer need it. And that is the key. And it truly works. We're talking about people that have had unmentionable physical and sexual abuse that guard it, and in their sacral area guard for damage. And anybody who has had unwanted sex, rape, trauma in their sacral area are definitely going to be feeling shame and unable to speak their truth. So you're blocking your throat chakra, you're blocking your heart, you're blocking the root chakra and sacral chakra, and then there's your stomach in the middle, isolated. It's not grounded and it's not connected to divinity. So you have stomach issues, and people have immune disorders, and like POTS with tachycardia, where I'm working with 3 different people who sit in a chair and they have a resting heart rate of 70, but if they get up to go to the refrigerator, they're at 160. Wow. So that's stored somatic trauma triggering, like your autonomic nervous system is on warp 9 all the time, and just getting up triggers tachycardia and they start to pass out. And this somatic trauma imprint release has helped all of them. It works amazingly well, and it works amazingly fast.
I love listening to all your experience and stuff. I find myself kind of drifting off, not like drifting away, but, when you're talking about focusing on the breath, and also because I trained in hypnotherapy, I'm quite good at like really chilling out. I did have a little thought about people who have experienced trauma that you can't communicate with, like maybe small children or babies, people who you can't share a spoken context with. Would you be able to release the trauma imprint yourself on their behalf, like as a parent?
Without touching the child?
Yeah. From a place of empathy, from the connection, given that we're in an entangled universe. I mean, this is possibly a little bit of a far out question, but it just occurred to me. There are going to be lots of people who can't actually talk or vocalize what's going on. And there are also healers and empaths out there that I believe can feel the pain of another person.
Oh, absolutely. Undoubtedly. And I will respond to that. But first, I want to say, I don't think you've ever had a little thought. So yes, let's not understate these questions. These are very, very important points to make. And I know, if you look at the most documented remote healer in history, Edgar Cayce, the medical industrial complex tried to disprove him thousands of times. And he was able to talk to people on the phone, and just from the frequency of their voice, he would create the phenomena in his body, heal it for himself, and therefore it healed in him, in the other person. Now, I don't claim to be a remote healer, but whatever's possible for somebody is possible for everybody.
Yes.
And the more it's integrated into society, it becomes the 100 monkey thing, where once, 100 people do it, then it's integrated into consciousness. So I work with people over the phone that are suffering from autonomic tension and immune disorders and POTS and things, where just talking like us on a Zoom is not even possible. The electromagnetic frequency of a phone puts them into tachycardia, and they can't speak on the phone. But I will say that the one young lady I'm working with in California had her mom talking on the phone, and she'd never been on the phone for more than 5 or 10 minutes in her whole life. And she liked what she heard so much, she took the phone from her mom and we talked for an hour. And now she's leaving the home, and she's desensitized from chemical sensitivity and offer meds. And it's an amazing story. I think I talked about it last time, but we talk about it remotely. So I believe, and I'm willing and able and looking forward to using my entanglement, my heart toroidal field in the space of a child who can't communicate, and release that trauma with them. And I believe without laying hands, without putting pressure, without even being in the same room, that is possible. Because what quantum physics tells us is that for every problem in the universe, there's a quantum solution. There's a solution in the quantum, right? So if we are fully in the moment with that child, and we are receptive to the design that best fits them, then it can be their healing as well. And that is the basis of remote healing and energy healing, is that the healer taps into the proper design without the body armor. See, we can feel it and absorb it empathically without building the armor. And then therefore we entangle them in it, and the body armor dissipates. So like havening, Stephen and Ronald Rudin have shown that there is a frequency dissonance between the thalamus and the amygdala, that there's actually a calcium molecule that vibrates so fast at that stuck frequency of being triggered, the somatic trauma, that new consciousness can't come in and have that perfect design. So when you are doing havening or tapping or somatic trauma imprint release, and you're in the moment with a person, you're creating a delta brainwave frequency in your awake mind. That's normally a sleeping frequency of health and healing and growth. So when you create that frequency within you, and you're within the toroidal field of the other person, then that they entangle to that, they entrain to that, and that helps release the trauma. So like I said, I haven't done it myself with a child who can't speak or be touched, but I completely hold space for the possibility that I can and I will, and that other people already do. So yes.
That's a fantastic answer. I'm as a sort of like fellow empath, and knowing lots of empaths and healers, I felt that was a possibility. I kind of knew it as a possibility because probably about 5-6 years ago, I noticed that there was, and I sort of like confirmed this with lots of healer friends, a certain amount of trauma, sort of almost like being grounded through our own bodies. I was saying, hang on, this isn't mine. I recognize my own patterns. Something's going on that's not mine. And I spoke to lots of other healers around the world, and there's a bit of a phenomenon going on where I think unhealed stuff is I know it sounds really bizarre, but a lot of unhealed stuff is being willingly or unconsciously taken on by people who can feel stuff, for people who just aren't prepared to feel it themselves. The idea of I don't know, maybe grounding, healing energy, releasing old traumas. I think at some level, humanity, I really noticed it about 5 years ago. It felt like there was almost like a fever pitch, and there was so much going on that people just couldn't cope with what was going on in their lives. And it felt like a sort of untapped misery somewhere that was it needed to land somewhere. And I'm aware that it's almost like there are human lightning rods. Lots of empaths out there that are like lightning rods that are there to kind of capture it and ground it and let it go.
And I would like to speak on that, of course, but there's so much truth to that. And this is my belief system, and the science behind it is like in Ho'oponopono, they teach that the essence of all our souls is peace, joy, and love. And anything not that is a human condition, a human winding that has a polar opposite, and it's only temporary. Peace, joy, and love are our natural states of being. And if you think of yourself and other people you know, any energy healer or any empath has had trauma of their own.
Mm.
You know, and they overcome something, and it makes them more empathetic to other people. Like abusers, they either grow up to be abusers or someone that never would, right? And hopefully we can create an environment where people don't get abused and then never would repeat, right?
Yeah.
So in the practice, in the belief system of Ho'oponopono, if your essence of your soul is peace, joy, and love, and you experience something traumatic that is not that, it creates a divide between your conscious mind and your autonomic consciousness, because your autonomic consciousness wants homeostasis. It wants balance. That's its job. Your conscious mind really wants to let go of whatever it is, but the subconscious programs don't allow it. The subconscious programs are what place the event-specific biological markers to warn you that that trauma might happen again. So once there's a divide created, a crevasse created between the essence of your soul and what's happening in your life, an empath then is the grounding rod for other people's trauma. Because when you're empathetic and you really feel it, it's proven that the brain doesn't know the difference between a story and a real event. So when you're sitting with somebody and you're listening to their story, you get butterflies in your stomach. You feel angst because your brain is producing the blood chemistry for you to go through that. And that's how I believe remote healers heal, is because their brain doesn't know the difference between a story and a real event. It produces the blood chemistry needed to react to that, but it's not held by the body armoring, and then they can produce that for the other person. So I think that's exactly how people become empathetic and how healers become good healers, is because they're open to that divinity for themselves and then for others, to release the stored trauma that fell into that crevasse that keeps you separated, your conscious mind and your life separated from the divinity of your soul. And that's part of my talking point, my presentation coming up. And I'm going to do Wisdom Con with Geraldine on the 24th and 25th. So that is the heading is, like we've talked about, biohacking the physiology of our divinity, right?
That's magical. And I will look out for that for sure, because I just imagine you and Geraldine are just going to be phenomenal together. Whilst you were saying that, Jeff, not to take us on another kind of like wormhole.
I love those rabbit holes.
Well, I mean, this conversation is almost like you and I have been like smoking weed or something, or like drinking mushroom tea. But as you were talking about that and the empaths and how we're kind of like lightning rods, it also occurred to me that we've also got what do you call those? Site-specific events, or what do you call them on the body?
Yeah, event-specific biological markers.
Sorry, I got it all mixed up. Event-specific biological markers.
Yes.
Earth has those too.
Oh.
So collectively, Earth has event-specific biological markers.
Yeah.
And that will be why lots of people, because I'm very aware that my husband and I get moved around quite a bit. Ever since we've come together, it feels like we get moved around to different places. And it feels like we're just meant to be there for some reason. And I know quite a few. In fact, I interviewed a fellow speaker at the High Self Expo, which took place in July this year, Christiane L. Tran, who follows the pranic lifestyle, and in her work, she goes from site to site to clear any trauma that's kept in the earth's
right.
That is marked there somehow.
Right.
So this is something going on at a body level, on a world level. and who knows
I
how far
agree.
out, how far in it goes.
Right. And as I speak about living systems, that even a Planck wave is a living system because it has energy, mass, and information. And every living system, from a subatomic particle to an atom to a molecule to a organelle to an organ, a body, to our planet, to our solar system, to our universe, are all living systems. And every living system is interacting with other living systems, right? So on our Earth, we all know, most of us know, that there are energy meridians of positive energy, and different civilizations have tried to dominate those for good or bad throughout history. So if you look at the natural law of the universe, for every yin, there's a yang, for every light, there's a dark, for every possible positive energy center, there's going to be some negative energy somewhere. And if you think of areas where war has occurred, and areas where there's been immense suffering, like happens all the time in the world right now, then that's creating a frequency for humanity. And if you look at the scales, if you try to balance the scales, and I've often thought, if every hungry stomach growl could be heard, if every angst of a mother missing their child, or fear of a drone strike, or if all of that was audible and we could hear it, it would be unsurvivable. We couldn't survive it just to hear it, let alone feel it. Okay. So, but that energy is being broadcast off of our Earth all the time. And you have other people trying to be the Zen and be the good energy, right? And that's scales tipping. So everything we do to clear the energy chakras of the Earth and the energy negative that's happening, we take this negative from one side of the scale, which is great, but then we also place it on the other side of the scale, and we really tip the scales. So the healing that we can do in our body and release somatic trauma, we can also do for Mother Gaia, Mother Earth. And if you look at heart math, and they have the Global Coherence Project, where they have sensors around the world picking up on that biofrequency. They're monitoring that so that we can make advancements in healing Earth for that very reason. So I agree with you completely.
Wow. This is quite a spaced out day, isn't it?
It is.
I'm really loving it.
Can I want to comment on that statement about weed and mushrooms. I believe in plant medicine.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I also believe in Wim Hof, that it's much better to get high on your own supply. Like I told McCoy this just the other day. Yes, I've done things in the past, but nothing I've ever done organically even feels as good as I feel right now on the energy created by being in the vortex with him, being in that heart space and connecting to all these people that we're being connected with. Because if you take the polar opposite, where it was just me and him in the hospital room and no contact to the outside world, no help, no nothing, and thinking of these things and wanting to help and wanting to get that message out there and get help for us at the time. And then it turns into us helping others. And now it's the polar opposite. Now we have all of these people's energy and vortexes and missions joining, become an emergent total greater than the sum of its parts, adding to that vortex and tipping the scales in a positive direction. That's how we change. That's quantum alchemy. That's how we change the course of Mother Earth and repair her.
Wow. I would absolutely agree with the comment about doing it yourself as well. I don't like anything whereby I don't feel like I'm in control and able to do it myself. And I think most of us, if not all of us, have been given the tools to be able to do that as well.
Yeah. Oh, innately. It is absolutely correct. And Wim Hof, You're aware of Wim Hof? He does
Yeah.
he's the
Yeah.
Iceman.
No way I'm going to be doing
Love it.
ice.
I've done his breath work. Love it. And I give him credit for that quote, get high on your own supply. And that doesn't mean your own bag of mushrooms. That means your own blood chemistry, you know? And that's Bruce Lipton, the honeymoon effect, heaven on earth, right?
Yeah.
That's the teaching of the learned masters that are available to us now and all the way back thousands of years ago, right?
Yeah. Whew. Do you know what? During this conversation, I'm either getting like premenopausal or I'm actually having a physical reaction because, you know, in this conversation, I just felt the heat rising. It's like there's so much healing energy around. I feel like absolutely exhausted and also invigorated. So we were talking about body armoring and how you were able to. Oh, you've got a police. Sorry, I was hearing this whistle in the back of my.
Well, it's a siren on this end. I live right on a busy street in Seattle. Yeah.
Oh well, I'm coming to you live from Lisbon, right, fairly central as well. So there's a lot going on here as well.
Lisboa.
Yes, lovely Lisboa.
Love it. Been here. Love it. I can't wait to come back and see you.
Yeah, you should. And we've got a place for you to come and visit as well. So you were talking about how you were able to kind of coach McCoy into trusting you and for that trust in that area to become so natural that there was absolutely no sense, no nothing untowards, you know, that it was completely free of trauma. So the process, sorry, did you want to mention anything else about that or go in a little bit deeper?
Well, you've already
the conversation off on a journey, didn't I?
You've already spurred a new thought. I mean, and being in the moment, being a mindful listener brings that divine download. Trust is part of our innate being. We learn not to trust.
Yeah.
So trust is a return to kindness, a return to your joy, peace, joy, and love. So learning to not trust is neuroplasticity. You build connections of not trusting somebody for a reason.
Yeah.
So the unwinding of that is what returns you to trust and being in that moment, being peace, joy, and love, and not tricking somebody. You know, if a child is told this isn't going to hurt and it does, are they going to believe you again? Never. Never. If you say this will only take a second and then 3 doctors hold them down, what are they going to do next time? So that's a huge point you just made about trust and being in that place where trust is a literal definition of do or die. You don't betray it.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely spot on. I remember from our last talk that we were talking about kissing boo-boos better, you know, for a child. And it's really funny because I've been a bit more mindful about it when my littlest has hurt himself. And it's got to the stage now, within just 2 weeks, he comes to me for everything now. And he's like, kiss my boo-boo better. He calls it boo-boos, which I never even used that word before, but now he's using it. And we had this really lovely moment just recently where he said, oh, I'm hurt here. And he pointed to different parts of his body and basically got me to kiss him all over. But he absolutely, it's built so much trust and is absolutely magical. You know, he absolutely believes that the trauma has gone the moment some good feeling and attention has gone there. It's really changed things. So
I love that because your inner wisdom told you to do that. And any outside society pressure says, oh, don't do that. You're going to baby
them.
So you've had to go against what would be societal pressure or peer pressure and go back to your innate trust of your knowing. And our discussion helps. And I know we traded back and forth a couple pictures and some science about that to help the buy-in and then just be free with it. You think of any person who's lost a child. And I've met, at the Ronald McDonald House, we were there for 4.5 years and it's an average of 1 a week. You see people moving out And you don't say, oh, great to see,
Mm,
you never know, right?
mm.
So any one parent who's ever lost a child would tell you, kiss those boo-boos all day long. Don't you
Yes.
ever let anybody tell you to
Mm,
not cuddle, to not bed share, to
mm.
not share an intimate moment anytime you can and gain that coherence and trust.
Yeah.
Never, never let anybody tell you to go away from what your heart's telling you. So well done, mama.
Thank you. And we do bed share quite a bit actually. So
Yeah, right.
yeah, until our children are ready for their own space and they have their own spaces, and we let them go at their own pace.
Yeah.
So I feel like I could carry on talking to you all night, because this is always just such a pleasure. What I'm thinking is maybe we should book another time where we can
Mhm.
do this live. So if anyone's listening in today or has listened into a previous episode with us, that they can join the conversation with us, so that they can ask us stuff and we can go like wild and free,
Yeah,
and really allow the sort of like cosmic wisdom in. But
I
right
would
now,
love.
I'd like to explore the next part of the breathing, if that's the right timing for you.
Sure, absolutely, absolutely. And to lay the foundation on our breathing exercises, we have the reset breathing, where if we feel triggered, we have a breath work to get reset. And then we have the controlled breathing, where we breathe in for 5 seconds through the nose and we exhale for 6 seconds out of the mouth, saying ah. And then
Ah.
our goal is to get to our pulse.
Mhm.
And that's the coherence breathing, where we're breathing in our nose for 5 heartbeats and breathing out of our mouth for 6 heartbeats.
Mm.
And as long as we are in a calm state, we can start right there. Like if I'm sitting in a space, a comfortable space, and I don't feel triggered, I don't need the reset breathing. If
Mm.
I'm in my zone, my sanctuary space, that I try to carry that bubble all day, something comes into my awareness that's parts, I start to feel it sooner because it's very sensitive, right?
Mm.
So then I just do my reset breathing once to clear, to get back to zero, because I don't want any outside stimuli to trigger me.
Mm. Yeah.
Okay. So we don't need to start there unless we feel triggered. So throughout the day, breathe in for 5 seconds in the nose, breathe out for 5 seconds out of the mouth. If you're comfortable in your surroundings, use the ah sound. If you can't, you can hum, you can just do the breath, get to that point. And it's like we're saying about anything. It's like riding a bike. It takes a lot of practice to lay the foundation. But then every
Mm.
time you go to ride a bike, you don't have to relearn it. It's in there.
Mm.
The neural pathways are there. You've laid that foundation. So the more we do our controlled breathing and we say the ah, and the ah vibrates the vagal nerves and sends serotonin into the bloodstream, we're making that connection happen faster and faster and stronger every time. So, as we talked about in the previous show, we don't really want to start triggering somatic trauma
Mm.
until we've done the coherence breathing enough that we can easily feel our heartbeat. Because if we
Mhm.
have autonomic tension, you can't even find your heartbeat because everything's so
Yeah.
tense and the vessels are swollen and people can't find their heartbeat. So, if you can find your heartbeat, and you can clearly feel it speed up and slow down, then we're ready to start laying down that somatic trauma imprint release, where we clench our pelvic floor on
Mhm.
4, 5, and 6 of the exhale. So we can start with that since we've graduated to that point and we're not in a triggered environment.
Yeah.
We can start with that and we can get the cycle going. I don't want to clench the pelvic floor until I really feel it speed up and slow down.
Mhm.
And that was where, you mentioned there might be a danger of doing it wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
The only real danger is that you're going to re-trigger, right?
Mm.
And then we're going to have to breathe again to get it back to zero. So you want to be able to really clearly feel your heartbeat speeding up on the inhale
Mhm.
and slowing down on the exhale, and clinch the pelvic floor on 4, 5, and 6.
Mm.
Then once we get that, like one of the things I do is I will go down to my artery in my sacral area, just inside of the hip. And then I'll do that. And then I'll reach over to this side and we breathe in. And then we start to press on an area like we talked about, just underneath the shoulder, underneath the collarbone, just inside the shoulder, there's a little indent. And then the pec muscle, the pectoral muscle starts right there. And these muscles connect and go under the collarbone and surround the vagal nerve and hook to our skull. So when we're tense and tight, they choke off the vagal nerve and they stop the ascending and descending information. So relaxing this anchor point is key to opening up your chest and opening up the flow and relaxing that muscle that surrounds the vagal nerve so that we can improve our vagal tone and increase that neural pathway into a superhighway and stay in that state of being so that we feel things sooner. So as I said before too, it's easy to like rotate the shoulder, and that's where I'm incorporating body movement into my coherence breathing as a next step. But you kind of put even before you start breathing, like you can target a spot in the day and, oh, there it is. I can feel a spot right there. Okay, so that's my target spot. And you can leave your hand there. You can feel this, or you can reach around. This is what I do. Like when I'm doing my coherence breathing, I do the international sign language for love you. I love you. And I do it to myself because I'm giving myself love, right?
Wow.
By being mindful. And then I do the courtesy reach around and I feel my pulse on that hand. And so there I go. So if I'm touching this spot over here, right, I can reach on my wrist and feel my pulse at the same time. So we breathe in for 5 heartbeats. We breathe out. And on the 4th heartbeat, we just put a little pressure on that spot, just gentle with yourself, because you don't want to interrupt that autonomic swing. If you start to put pressure on it and you feel your heartbeat speed up again, back off a little. Okay, we're not ready yet. And really, we're not in a hurry. Everybody wants the result, but we have to just give it time. And the thing to remember is that you have reached a singularity where we might be continuing to build pressure, but now we're starting to go the other direction. So just be patient with yourself, be gentle, return back to that kindness without, and I always say, we want to set an intention, but not an agenda, not a human agenda.
Yeah.
We want to just set the intention that we will feel better. If we don't feel it speeding up and slowing down, imagine what it would feel like to do it. But because before creation, there's imagination, right?
Yeah.
Nothing happens in the universe without first the spark of thought, right? So we will find our spot, do the reach around, find your pulse on that same hand that you're touching with, breathe in for 5 heartbeats, and then on the exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we want to really accentuate it, stepping down and slowing, and just gently touch that spot. Try to sit up straight and free yourself, have a posture, power posing posture, whatever way you're comfortable. When I do it laying in bed is when I reach down and get the artery for my leg, because it's almost like one of the things I do is we want to ground our root chakra as well. When I work with people, we work on clearing the root chakra, grounding the root chakra, because we want energy to go to Mother Earth. We want to be grounded in Mother Earth and give the energy something that it's grounded to so that we can release it. We can have that gamma-gasm, right, out the crown chakra. So really consider the way you're sitting, the way your feet are grounded, and then push gently on 4, 5, and 6, trying to maintain that swing. And as long as you're maintaining the swing, you can do it. And it's very gentle. It's like, think of a swing. Think of pushing a child on a swing. It might take a little push to get it going, but each time it just takes a little push, little push. And if you think about like Nikola Tesla's invention of, it's called the earthquake machine, where he made an oscillator, a frequency oscillator. And if you match the frequency of a brick, it'll crumble, right? That's like Gallipoli 30, the bridge in Tacoma, the famous bridge in Tacoma, Washington, that was in an earthquake, and it just started swinging and swinging, and it just fell all apart. So even this big, beautiful engineered structure, it was spaced just right where the frequency of the earth matched the frequency of the bridge, and it crumbled the whole bridge. So that's the scientific basis behind Tesla's earthquake machine, is that it only takes, and it was only a box this big, but if you hold it up to a brick wall and you start the oscillation, and each time that you touch it, you're raising the frequency. And then once you get the frequency to match the somatic trauma frequency, it breaks apart. So that's the scientific backing and theory behind the stir technique. So be very gentle with yourself. And it's something you do with yourself. When I work with other people, I will have them lay down and I'll have them do their coherence breathing, and I'll put my fingers on their wrist, and I breathe as they breathe. So we entrain our breathing, and that entrains our autonomic swing and our heart, and we become coherent together and entrained. So when I'm feeling their pulse and pushing on their chest, I do it for them. Then if I feel their heartbeat continually slow down, then I know I can push a little more, and then all of a sudden it's gone. So that's what we can do for ourselves. And then we can work with a partner and do that together, whether it's, me and a care recipient, or it's you and your husband, Carl, or whoever it is. A massage therapist can be taught these, and I'd be happy to Zoom with anybody. If anybody has a body worker, in Portugal or anywhere else, and they would like to try this, I would be more than happy to teach any body worker this technique so that they can do it with that person. I'd prefer to do it with everybody. I love doing it. It's an amazing. You talk about our conversation in this heart-centered shared space and how we feel all wavy, and that's what it's all about. When I go into a session and I'm empathetic and I'm entrained to their rhythm and I feel that energy dissipate, I am supercharged, man. It's just, that's the high on your own supply right there.
Definitely. Absolutely. Another application I just realized, giving birth.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine being able to, like as a midwife, to be in coherence with the person that's giving birth? I mean, I don't know what happens to the heartbeat while you're giving birth, and with contractions and things. And I'll be completely honest, even though I've birthed 3 children, really easily and effortlessly, I didn't go to one antenatal class at all, because I didn't want to learn how difficult it was going to be, because I thought it wasn't help me. But I would imagine at some level there's an application there as well.
Yeah, I was exposed to a video. I don't have it readily available, but somebody had showed it to me. I could go back and get it, but there's a video of a woman laying on a table with no help, no midwife, no assistance, and she's just doing her breathing. And of course, it's coherent breathing. If you're breathing slowly in and out, you look at Lamaze breathing. That's the, everybody knows that breath work is how women went behind a tree, gave birth to a baby on their own and carried it back and started working again, or whatever, that it's just, It's natural. It's the human windings and the fear of the medical industrial complex that triggers us into needing drugs and assistance. So like I said, one of my daughters has her master's in women's health, and she's a midwife.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And so we've had discussions about this a lot of times, and she brings coherence breathing into the birth room, and her coherence becomes the mom's coherence. If you're about to have birth and your doctor comes in late and all freaked out, you're going to be freaked out, right? Because it's contagion, positive or negative, right? So what you're talking about is completely legit. And the video that I was talking about shows the lady go through these convulsions of her body and effortlessly gives birth to the baby. And that's the design of the divine. That is how it was meant to be, and how it's capable for everybody, barring some, strange anomaly. But that is the goal. That's the intent. So again, we want to have an intent for that without an agenda, so that if you need, like my daughter literally has the highest success rate of keeping women in natural childbirth versus going to C-section.
Yeah.
Unprecedented numbers. And it's because of this. It's because of her way of being. Not that I taught her that. I mean, we talked about it along the way, but she's that way anyway. I mean, we've talked about coherence and breath work far before McCoy was sick and before she became a midwife. So, it's just, it is completely transferable into every life situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then that state of being allows a clear portal for the child to come through unscathed, right? So, and then there's a succession of laying the child on the tummy, and it puts pressure before the placenta is passed. And when the baby finally suckles, it creates pressure that releases the last of the stem cells and good nutrients out of the placenta before it's passed. So everything that's not that is interruption to the natural process and carries throughout the baby's life. And again, Dr. Thomas Verney, 40 years ago in his book, The Secret Life of the Unborn Child, talks about all of this. And there's another one that I read 30 years ago with my daughter. Denny Heisley wrote the book, Energetic Nutrition, I believe is the name of the book. And he was raised in a veterinary family. And he said what just blew him away is that when he became a doctor, he saw how opposite childbirth was from the way animals and humans do it in nature. And returning back to that, like returning back to kindness, returning back to peace, joy, and love is the setting for a beautiful childbirth as well.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. I just feel really blown away by this whole conversation today. It's been really magical.
Yeah. And you know what? You are part of the reason. I mean, we are doing this together, and you are so heartfelt into what you're doing and so organic and natural. I've had many people comment about how well we speak together and the energy, and we're coming from the same space. And I guarantee I've known you for many lifetimes, because
I'm sure of that.
It's not a new conversation. This is not, and it's not over. This is an ongoing, continued conversation that I'm excited to see. I have an intention of where it'll go, but no agenda.
And what an amazing place, I think, to maybe say goodbye today and park this conversation, because it is definitely ongoing. Definitely. So just to kind of recap, so people have got the reset breathing, the controlled breathing, the coherence breathing, and when they're doing that, they can hold onto the space where there's that soreness, and so when you're sort of releasing and slightly clenching at 4, 5, and 6, you're slowly putting more pressure on.
Yeah.
And with each breath, it's allowing a greater level of release.
Yeah. And I forward the Somatic Trauma Imprint Release breathing and scientific backing to you?
Most probably, but
Yeah,
I'm
we
a
need
bit
to make
slow
that
at
available.
reading things.
Anybody who's interested in having the slides and the science backing, there's actually scientific proof that Candace Pert teaches us in Molecules of Emotion that when we do the clenching on the exhale, there's an area in the midbrain that releases endorphins. And that's what helps overlay the parasympathetic, because you're being triggered by a physical touch, but you're creating endorphins in the bloodstream to override that signal. So the science behind it is in that slide, and it's really crucial to the buy-in. For some people don't need it. We just do it. But I've found more times than not that scientific buy-in, because it uses language, and of course language is energy and frequency, and it's feeling heard and feeling felt. When I can explain it to somebody in a way they can understand and absorb the science, then the buy-in is much greater and it works much faster. So I want to make sure, and anybody can contact me at jeff@mindfulpresence.org, and I can work with them or forward the slides. I had a workshop on Sunday with a young lady who had a horrible experience with a surgery on her foot. And I'm going to her house to work with her and her mom, and she started the breathing slides, and she's already releasing pain and trauma from that surgery. So I love doing it. I'm traveling to her because she can't walk yet, and we'll see where we go.
Awesome. Okay, so same time in 2 weeks' time.
I'm with you, girl.
Fantastic. Thank you so much once again. Thank you to anyone that's joined us today. Obviously not today because this is pre-recorded, but if you're listening, thank you so much for your presence. And you know, like Jeff says, there's an invitation for you to connect with us. And if we can be of any help, if you want to know anything else, then just send us an email, drop us a line, and we can incorporate it into a future recording. So anyway, I hope you found that really useful. I know I did. I actually listened again to this video last night and was kind of blown away again. It's really easy to learn all this stuff or listen to it and feel it. But, you know, I sometimes think that, you know, when you listen again, you have even more experiences to sort of corroborate some of this information. Anyway, I hope you found it useful. Like I said at the start, Jeff and I will be recording standalone breathing technique sessions. So I hope you'll find that useful. Anyway, stay tuned for our stuff. If you want to stay in touch, just drop me a line. It's Louisa@feelgoodastrology.com, and it's Jeff@mindfulpresence.org. Anyway, thanks so much for your time today. Lots of love to you. Bye for now.